Hi, welcome, Tirzah.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, welcome to Moonlight Conversations, the podcast. Thank you so much for being a guest here, and I'm so
Yeah, thank
glad that
you.
we connected. Thank you so much. So today we're going to talk about the quiet room. So basically, your experience with neurodivergence, agoraphobia, and highly sensitive, um so
Yes.
um and the need to just be. So I'm going to start off with the question. So how do you experience sensory overload? What are the primary triggers for your sensory overload?
So the way I would describe it is um it's like a buildup, first of all, because I
Mhm.
can be okay, say I can be in a group setting for a certain amount of time, but the more stimulation, um, it just sort of slowly starts to build up and I get uncomfortable. And maybe within like an hour of being out somewhere crowded, I just shut down. I have a hard time like making conversation, making eye contact. There's just so much information and stimulation coming at me. Driving is a bad one too, because especially if I'm in an unfamiliar area, like when I started one of my recent jobs, is a half hour drive from my house, which isn't bad, but I'm not familiar with the town. So I was like having panic attacks while I was driving because like
Oh
every
my
street is
god.
new, yeah, and I get to the point where I can't really, it's not that I can't hear my GPS, but I like stop being able to process the information that it's telling me,
Mhm.
and I have to pull over, otherwise I'm gonna like make a wrong turn. Like I turned into a one-way street the wrong way in this
Oh
like
my
semi
god. And
trunk.
you might have an
Uh,
accident
oh my
too
god.
if you're
Yeah.
driving and you just lose control or something.
Yeah, and I had an accident a few years ago, and it wasn't even like one of those situations. It was just I was coming home from a girls' night, going to my one friend's house to pick my kids up, and they have a lot of like woods, and their stop sign sits kind of far back. And as I was approaching the stop sign, I did not see a car coming, and it T-boned me. And my anxiety from driving has been so much worse since then.
Mhm.
But like the the overstimulation and everything plays a huge part in it too. And that's
So,
one of the things my
oh,
sorry.
sorry. Yeah, go ahead, please.
One of the things that my husband is excellent about is like he understands how hard that is for me, and if we're
Mhm.
going somewhere together, like it's not even a question. He always just drives. But then trying to like navigate, getting to work and stuff, I'm kind of on my own. And once I'm more familiar with an area, it's not as bad, but it's still a lot of
Mhm.
information coming at you. There's cars
Yes,
pulling in and
yes.
out and different roads and different buildings and sign. Like it all builds up. And that's what I
Yeah.
call like sensory overload. Cause after so long, my brain's just kind of like, it's just too much and I can't process, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so like for example, is loud music, for example, or loud sounds a trigger as
No,
well? Like
it
lots of people chatting.
depends. Lots of people, yes, because like it's so many different, like there's different conversations and different background noises, and
Mhm.
it's super hard for me to like focus. Music actually tends to help me, especially if it's loud because I
Oh,
can like drown everything else out. But it has
okay.
to be like music that I want to hear. If it's like something
Yes.
that's irritating to me, then it doesn't
Yes.
help. So, it
Yes.
just depends. Yeah.
So what type of um like obviously rock and not that, is that right?
I like rock. I'm a big Swiftie. Um, I
Oh,
was never like a big
seriously?
like pop person growing up, but like I loved her since she first started, like since she was, country twangy, and then I loved her pop stuff. Um and yeah, she's probably one of my favorites. I can listen to her like anytime. I love Gracie
Okay.
Abrams, I love Lady Gaga. But
Mm.
there's a lot of like bands I like too. I love a lot of like classic rock, David Bowie,
Oh,
the Moody
yeah.
Blues, Led Zeppelin, like
So those
anything
are
like
soothing for you.
old rock. Yeah, or soothing,
Yeah.
or maybe
Um,
not soothing so much, but
comforting.
like it helps to like tune out all the other like sensory going on.
Yes,
Soothing, I
yes.
like listening to just like piano music if I want something soothing. I don't know if you ever heard
Yeah,
of Ludovico and Naudi. I really like his
yeah,
music.
yeah.
That's something that's very calming to me.
Okay. What about bright lights and all that? So,
That can be very hard. And it's funny because like during the day, like summertime, natural sunlight, that's fine. That doesn't bother me.
yeah,
But say, and I don't do this a lot anymore, but like go to the bar with my friends and there's like
yeah.
screens and flashing lights, and you're in a dark place, but everything's like, flashing bright and colorful around you.
Flashing
And like
bright.
that can be
Yeah,
very overstimulating to me. Um
yeah. Okay. So, what are your like? Can you um sorry, can you discuss with us strategies that you do to overcome
mhm.
the yeah
It's not
overwhelm
always
or
possible, first of all, which is
yes,
hard, especially working outside my home, and that's rough. The reason I started cleaning is because I'm on my own most of the time, and
yes.
it's less stimulating that way because I'm just on my own.
Oh,
I can put headphones on, listen to what I want to listen to. Um, but I worked in an office for years. I worked in a bank for
yes,
years. People constantly coming and going and like needing to like, keep track of, finances and dollar amounts. And I would be just by halfway through the day, I would be exhausted. I was getting
yeah,
migraines constantly. I would come home, I would just crash. And
yes, I can
the bank was
imagine.
hard
Yeah,
because like a lot of the women around me would kind of like gossip if it was slow, like a customer would leave and they would talk about the person, and it just made me feel very self-conscious, and that played into it
mm,
too, like the social anxiety. I
yeah,
have a hard time opening up to people when I hear them
mm,
speaking badly about someone, because it's like, well, what do you say about me when I'm not here?
yeah,
So that made it
exactly.
really rough in that situation
Mm,
as well. Um,
okay,
but yeah,
all
working on
right.
my own, I don't have to deal with any of that. And like I loved being home, I love kids, but 10 years of caring for other people's children and other people's toddlers was a lot on my nerves and my sensory. Like they crawl on you and touch your face and pull your hair, and even when they're just like being affectionate, it's just like it's
Yes,
so
yes,
much all the time. And they're loud, and you're
yeah,
constantly worried like someone's going to get hurt, and you have to be on alert like all the time. So like after a
yeah.
decade of that, I was kind of ready to do something else. And I don't love cleaning, but like it's easier on my nerves, I guess.
Mm. So basically, what you're saying is that you choose the environment that you're in as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. So, um, like, how does like what other environmental modifications or accommodations do you find helpful aside from like choosing to be working alone? Like,
Mhm.
what else have you like got in place?
If I'm home and I just have had a lot of stimulation, I have to kind of just like go into my room and just sit in the quiet, just kind of center
Yeah.
myself. If it's nice
Do you
out,
like to keep
I
it
can go
dark as
outside.
well?
What's that?
Yes.
I'm sorry, what's that?
Sorry. Do you like going in into a dark room or something?
Um, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be dark, but like not too bright, not too stimulating, like my own room where it's just comfortable. Um, I'll just sit and
Mhm.
read a book or listen to music or whatever, sometimes just nothing, just sit there in silence. Sometimes I just need to close my eyes and take a nap. It just depends on like how exhausted I am.
Yeah.
Um, when the weather's nice, I can actually sit like outside in my yard and just like look at the woods and the trees, and that's
Mm.
very calming. Um, or going for a walk. But
Yes.
I live where there's harsh weather like 3/4 of the year, so we can't always do that. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So
but it's funny
you
that
can't
like being
really.
outside in nature, like
Mm.
that doesn't seem to like overstimulate me. But like
Oh,
other other elements do. Like
yeah.
just the colors and the sounds and you know, but in nature doesn't bother me. It's funny.
Yeah.
It must
It's
just be the way the brain's
it has a
wired. I don't know.
calming Yeah, it
Yes.
has a calming effect on you. That's great. So you do go in nature and you relax. And let's talk about agoraphobic experiences this time. So I understand you've got agoraphobia. So do you experience anxieties related to leaving safe spaces? Like,
Yes.
okay.
And it's not even necessarily just leaving safe spaces. Like, um, for example, we'll have a family party or something to go to, and I've been there. It's not like it's a not safe space, but I just think like, oh, there's going to be all these people there, and I'm gonna have to socialize, and the dread just builds up.
Mm,
And usually
mm,
once I get there, it's not that bad, like we'll have fun. I'll be overwhelmed, like tired and stuff when I get home, but it's almost like never as bad as I build it up in my mind, but my anxiety just gets so bad like leading up to it, cuz I
okay.
just and it's gotten worse since I've gotten older. Like I used to be better at it. I don't know what the difference is. I've heard
Yeah.
perimenopause can make it worse, so it could be that.
Yes.
But yeah, it's been very bad like the past couple years especially.
Okay.
I've
So,
not wanted to do almost anything social. I feel bad. My friends probably. I know I've had a couple of friends that are like, I feel like you're mad at me. And I'm like, I'm not mad at you. I just am having a
yes,
really hard
yes.
time. Yeah.
And you're an introvert as well. So we introverts don't really like a lot of
Right.
social engagements and stuff like
Right.
that.
Like
Not too much. You know what I
my
mean?
ideal evening is like curling up with a good book. And I've
Yes.
had friends that are like, how do you do that? I'd be so bored. And I'm like, I don't, that's my jam. I don't know. Like, that's just what I like to do.
That's true. So if um like what are the like let's say, is this the same with like your sensory overload, agoraphobia, in terms like leaving safe spaces or having a safe space to be in? Is it the same with like triggers and that?
I definitely think they're related. I've never been like actually diagnosed with agoraphobia, but I'm just
Mm,
assuming that that's what it is.
mm.
Um and like I said, it's definitely been intensified over the last couple of
Over
years.
the land.
And
Yes.
I'm not really even sure why, like I said, but
Mm.
um I'm sorry, what was the question again?
No, I just wanted to find out whether the triggers were the same with agoraphobia and sensory overload.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
agoraphobia, it has a lot to do with like just the overwhelm knowing that I need to like socialize with people. Um,
Mm.
and 9 times out of 10, I just don't want to. Like I'm not feeling like it anymore. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know why,
Okay.
but
All right. So let's talk about safe spaces this time. So, what do you consider a safe space for you? Like, I think you mentioned this earlier as well, but do you mind just touching on that again, please?
no, not at all. Um, I mean, just being at home is probably like my number one safe space.
Mm-hmm.
Or even out in my yard, but we live in a neighborhood where houses are very close together. So if
Mm-hmm.
I'm like just in my yard, I don't want to be like smack in the middle of it. I'll sit like under a tree or in our little like, I don't know, it's not a gazebo, but like a covered tent we have on our back
Mm-hmm.
porch in the summer, like somewhere where I'm not like wide out in the open where all the neighborhood
Yeah.
kids are like running by. And
Yeah.
um
Do
I don't
you
know. I have to
do you
have
like
like
talking to neighbors?
I do, but it just really depends because sometimes I'm just not in the mood to socialize and I
To
really
chat.
have to plan ahead of time. And when I plan ahead
Yes.
of time and I know something is coming up, and sometimes even that can be overwhelming, but like if it's a
Yeah.
one-on-one thing and I've known for a week, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
If a neighbor were to just like pop in on me, I hate that. And nobody really
Okay.
does that. My mother does it and I've told her before. It drives me crazy. Um, she doesn't do it a lot, but every once in a while, I'm like, I can't have company right now. Um, yeah,
That's
she's
funny.
she's
Yeah.
completely the opposite. She like feeds on social environments and I'm like, that drains me. So
Mm-hmm.
it's funny.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I need to
Okay.
have like protection around me, I guess. Like even when if I'm outside, if I'm like isolated, I'll go to a beach that's kind of private every once in a while and just pick up beach glass and like that's awesome because like there's nobody
Oh,
around and it's just
yeah.
like the
Yeah.
water, like all those like soothing sounds and
Yeah.
um
Are you
but if
close to
I'm
the
like in my
water?
yard, I definitely want protection around me, like something, a tree, just
Yeah.
something. It's funny,
Yeah.
I know. Just a
Oh,
psychological
that's
thing, I
it's not
guess.
funny at all. I mean, it's understandable because a lot of people we don't realize go through this as well, isn't it?
Yeah. I I guess I
Yeah.
didn't even realize I started realizing that it was more common than I thought it was just since joining
Yes.
Substack because I've joined a lot of groups with other people that have neurodivergence or just social anxiety and stuff like that.
Yeah. So, how do you use your safe space to help you expand your comfort zones?
Um, can you clarify that? Sorry.
Um, like, when you when you're at home, like you say, I think you've touched on this already as well, but you say you want to be like, say, not out in the open or something
Mhm.
like that. But how do you like expand it to like to be more comfortable in your safe space?
Um, I mean, if I'm at home, you mean?
Yeah, or in the yard or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm like outside and I stay sort of close to my, like the building part of my house, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not like out in the middle of the yard. I feel almost like shielded, like there's a wall there. There's not like
Yeah.
everybody around me can see me,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. And
Yes.
then the
Yes.
further out
totally.
I go, because all the houses are so close together, it's like the more exposed I feel. And it
Okay.
doesn't always bother me, but if I'm like feeling self-aware, it bothers me.
Mm,
Does that make sense?
okay. Yes,
Like
yes,
I can
totally.
be I can be in a mindset where I'm really not thinking about it, or I can
Like
be in
when
a
you're in
mindset where I'm
nature.
like, "Oh gosh, like everybody can see me and I just like don't want to have to talk to anybody right now." And then I'll kind of like want to stick closer to where my house is or my patio or like sit under a tree, like so I'm a little more like guarded.
So does that apply to like when you're in nature, like when you're say in the park or something? Do you have
Yeah.
to be like under a tree where you're like you're sitting somewhere close to like a building or something?
No. So if I'm going to a park, I kind of, it's one of those situations where I'm going to like gear myself up for it ahead of time
Ah,
because I mean, at least now at this point in time, and I don't do it as much, but I used to take my kids to the park
mm, mm,
constantly. And so there's other
mm.
parents and other kids. And so you
Yeah,
have to kind of engage with people. I mean, I
yeah,
could not, but I don't want to be that person. Like, I think it's a big misconception because, like, you say, you're agoraphobic or you have social anxiety and people think like, oh, you don't like talking, but that's not it at
yeah,
all. Like I love people, I love connecting with people. It's just
yeah.
very difficult for me at times. But like if I was going to take my kids to the park, I would like plan it a day in advance and like, okay, from this time to
Mm,
this time, we'll be here. And, you know, I would stay with my kids for the most part. I wouldn't be like sitting off to the side somewhere. So there would always be other parents talking and I just had to plan for it in advance and get myself like psychologically prepared, I guess.
and that's funny you said that because I spoke to Celine. You know Celine, right? I've
Mhm.
interviewed her before. She's also a highly sensitive person. And she said that, she mentioned that when, they have play dates or something, she usually plans it ahead of time, or she
Yes.
asks her husband to do the play dates or the
Yes.
going to the park or something, activities like that, day outs, because sometimes she gets overwhelmed, like you
Yeah,
said.
it's just too much sometimes.
Yeah,
But like
yeah,
preparing your head in advance does help.
mhm, yeah,
Um
yeah,
if it's like a once a week thing, you're not going every day or whatever, it does
yeah,
help. I mean, even like the public pool is
yeah,
so stimulating. But I would
mm,
go, a couple times during the summer, or we have a local amusement park and we get passes for
mm,
the kids in the summer, and that's so overstimulating. But I would have to tell myself, okay, so Tuesday and Thursday, we're doing this, you know, get enough sleep the night before, make sure you have a lot of fluids, eat healthy, like all these things help
mm,
because there's so much stimulation in those situations. And I know like the amusement park especially, driving home from that, I am so exhausted and then
yeah,
I get home and I just want to crash. My one friend Leanne, she's amazing. A
yeah,
lot of times we'll do buddy up together and she
yeah.
always offers to drive. She knows how I get with driving and how
Oh,
overwhelmed I get, and
yeah,
she's amazing. She's
that's
more on the
great.
sensitive, quiet side too, so she I think is like one of my few
Oh,
friends that really get it.
get it.
Um
Yeah.
but she doesn't get like the overstimulation from driving and that kind of thing.
Mm. That's
Um
good. And I guess you answered my next question, was going to be around parenting and, that. So I guess what my question was going to be, how do you explain to your kids, or how do you work around your kids' needs as well as yours? How to balance them out. I guess you sort of answered that earlier, that you have to plan ahead
Mhm.
and you do it like once or twice in the summer, like
Like once or
not
twice a
all the
week we'll
time,
go. So
or
I'll have like a couple of
once
days
or
a
twice?
week that we're, yeah, doing something social in the summer, but like the night before, I'll make sure like I'm like having a smoothie with lots of fruit and vegetables in it, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
get enough rest because I know I'm gonna be in this situation. And it helps when you're better rested, and just telling myself, you're gonna be in this situation. There's gonna be lots of people.
Mm,
Like
mm-hmm.
telling myself that ahead of time just to sort of prepare myself helps. I don't like I don't like surprises. Like if someone was like, "Hey, we're going
Yeah.
to do this today." Like I couldn't just drop everything and do it. Like that's so hard for me. Um
Oh,
about
okay.
the only thing I can maybe do that with is like a one-on-one coffee date, and even that's hard like if I don't
Mm,
know at least a day in advance, cuz
mm.
you just don't want anything like just thrown at you at the last minute, I guess.
Yes, yes, exactly. Even the normal person, I don't think would like that, appreciate that.
Yeah.
I mean, usually you plan ahead for those things, but yeah, yeah. So, do your kids know, or are they aware?
Oh
And
yeah.
how do you talk to them about it?
Well, it's funny because for a long time, I didn't know. I just thought
Yeah.
like, I just felt agitated all the time. And like,
Mm,
my husband would say things like, "Why are you always so agitated? You're always so angry." And like, I would just snap and I didn't know why.
yeah.
Um, and it wasn't until my youngest was born,
Yeah.
from the day she was born, she had sensory issues. We didn't know what it was at the time, but she
Oh,
cried constantly. She did not sleep. I remember taking her to the doctor and I'm like, all my other kids were such good sleepers. I'm like, babies are supposed to sleep. She cries all night. I'm not sleeping. Like, so by the time she was starting to talk, and she was an early talker around one,
yeah.
we
Yeah.
started figuring out like she seemed very anxious.
Yeah.
And once she was diagnosed, I started looking it up. And the more I started researching it, the more I was like, I relate to all of these things. And so
Oh.
once I realized that about myself,
Mm-hmm.
I I voiced that to my kids. But before
Okay.
that, I think like I would snap at them sometimes and not even know why, and then I would feel so bad afterward.
Yeah.
And there was no explanation. Whereas like I'm not doing that now, because if I feel myself get that way, I'll be like, "Mommy needs to go in her room for a little bit. Like I just need to lay
Yes.
down." And,
Yes.
I'll tell them I'm sensitive, like, instead of like snapping if they say something that
Yes.
like rubs me the wrong way and I'm in that mood, I can actually like
Yeah.
sit and think about it and be like, what you said, that's kind of hurtful. That hurt my feelings, or, or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, but I'm
Mm.
able to verbalize what I'm feeling inside now that I've
Mm.
been able to like recognize what it is, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I've
Okay.
been a lot better about, vocalizing that to my children.
Vocalizing. That's great. Okay. So, with like neurodivergence, the need for stillness, for example, how is the need to just be without demands or expectations in your life, how is that important to you?
I mean, I need that like I need food or sleep. Seriously. And even
Mm,
before I
mm,
knew what it was I was going through, like even as a kid, I would shut myself in my room, listen to music, draw. My mom would come in, my brother would come in, they'd be like, "Come, do this with us." And
mm,
my mom was like genuinely concerned about me that I didn't want to. And I didn't know why I was that way, but I mean, even from the time I was a child, I was needing that space to just be. I was that quiet time.
yeah,
And it wasn't, that anything was wrong with me. It was just the way my brain was wired. But I didn't even figure that out until I was an adult. And I had already
yeah.
been, you know, taking time to myself for as long as I can remember.
Oh, okay. So you were like that as a kid as
As a
well.
kid, oh yeah, for
And
sure.
yeah,
And I would
okay.
socialize. I had friends, but
Mm,
like I didn't like when my friends would just pop in on me. You know, when you're a
yes,
teenager and
yes,
everyone starts
yes,
driving, they do that a lot, and that like I I would like go along with it cuz I had to, but it was so like miserable. I don't even know how I did it.
yeah,
And I wouldn't be able to do it now because it's gotten so much worse, but thankfully like once you're an adult, people don't just like randomly pop in on you.
yeah.
Um
True.
yeah.
Okay. So, what do you or how do you recognize when you need to be or when you need to just be, or what does just being look like to you?
So a lot of times like I'll feel kind of agitated, like just someone just says the wrong thing and I can feel it almost like a buildup in my nerve endings, if that makes sense. Like a
Mm,
tingling in your arm, like your muscles are like actually tightening and tensing up, and you feel like
ah,
you could like snap and just say something that you don't mean, kind of a feeling. And if I
okay.
feel that way, I'm like, okay, I need to go in my room for a few minutes, or sometimes
Mm,
it even ends up being an hour or two, just depending on how much time I need. But
yes. And you
if I start
de-stress.
feeling, yeah. And depending on the situation, it's not necessarily the feeling of agitation.
Yes.
It could just be like I'm exhausted, or it could be that like I said, when I'm driving and stuff and it gets
Yes.
really overwhelming because I'm in an unfamiliar place and all this new information is coming at me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I will start to actually like my mind goes blank. I'm not processing what I'm hearing. I'm not processing my GPS. And another weird thing, it's like kind of it's obviously anxiety connected, but it's completely different. But
Mm,
the only other thing that I am aware of where I actually like kind of lose the ability to hear is I'm a metaphobic, which means if
mm,
somebody vomits, my brain shuts down. I start to get tunnel vision, my ears
yes.
ring, and I cannot hear anything else going on around me. I get dizzy. I have to
Oh,
like sit somewhere, put my head down. If no one, if my kids are sick and no one's home, I have to like take breaks cleaning it up
yes.
because like I just look at it and my hearing just goes. My eyes, I get blackout vision, and it's
Blackouts.
scary. And I remember being that way when I was a
Um,
little child. My brother would get sick and I would run and like hide behind a chair and like duck my head down, and my mom was always like, your brother needs
oh,
attention and you're doing and
yeah.
like I was just trying to get away from it. um
Yes.
but yeah, that's like in those situations, like it affects me so much that I will start to lose the ability to like see and hear. um
Mm-hmm.
like I need to actually like go somewhere, lay down, shut my eyes. Like it's bad.
Yeah. Okay. So you just lay down. Just being would be laying down and getting
Yeah.
space
And
away
in some
from,
situations
yeah.
sitting. I mean, it just depends. But like,
Mm,
yeah, there's situations where I outright need to sleep. Like if I get a
yes.
migraine or something.
Yes.
And then there's situations where I can sit and read a book. I just can't have all the
Mm,
commotion around me. So
okay.
it
Awesome.
depends on the severity, it depends on what's causing it. I guess there's just different factors.
Yeah. Okay. So with self-regulation, what strategies do you find most effective, like mindfulness, grounding techniques, or other specific activities that you do to
Um
self-regulate at all?
so there's exercises that I'll follow. Like on Spotify there's like different podcasts where they'll tell you to like
Mhm,
lay in a comfortable space, close your
mhm,
eyes.
mhm,
They'll say, relax your toes and your feet and your shin, like
mhm,
all the way up to your head, and then like close your eyes, and then um picture your you're in the middle of a lake on a boat, and it just kind of like talks you
Ah,
into
okay.
like
It's
this
like,
serene space, and that
yeah.
can help. Sometimes just counting. I had a friend
Yeah.
tell me a long time ago, like, because I struggle with insomnia sometimes, and she said
Mm.
one of the things she does is she counts backwards from 300 by threes. It forces your brain
Oh,
to like focus on the numbers, and I
focus.
do that
Yes.
to this day when I'm falling asleep because it helps me. Like if I have a lot on my mind and I
Oh,
just can't get myself to self-regulate, I'll start counting back,
yeah.
300,
Oh,
297, and like you have to like think
297.
about it as you go because your brain
Yes,
doesn't
yes,
naturally follow that pattern. And so
yes,
just
yes.
focusing on that,
It's
it
not just
allows your brain
counting
to,
back. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's also counting 3 steps back.
yes,
You know what I
yes,
mean? Oh my God. So it really um turns your focus into that.
yes.
Yeah. And then I see what you mean when you listen to those in Spotify, the meditation things, because I have sort of the same thing. It's called the Calm app. I don't know if you're
Oh yeah,
familiar with that. Yeah, so they have like people reading stories or just meditative like sounds, and
yes.
like even the rain or something like that.
Rain
Yeah,
sounds is another. I like to sleep to
rain
rain
sounds.
sounds a lot. It's
Yes,
helpful.
yes. That's awesome. Okay, so what are your how do you uh, like what are your mental and emotional well-being maintenance methods, like aside from those, like what do you do? You mentioned earlier you have to, like when you try to prepare for something, you eat a lot of like nutritious food and
Mhm.
you make sure you get sleep and all that. What else do you do to look
It's
after your
hard
mental and
because, like, right now, I probably need it a lot, but because I'm working so
Mhm.
much, I'm trying to like write late at night when everybody's asleep, and I should be sleeping,
Oh,
and I'm not like, I'm definitely not taking the care of my body that I
yeah.
need to be doing. But just, the eating right, the sleeping right, the making sure that I take time out for myself, just the quiet
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
That's all part of it. There's no like real
Mhm.
way to get rid of it, but that all just kind of like helps with my mindset.
Mhm. Okay, that's great. And how well do you, like this is in regards to societal understanding and support. How well do you feel society understands and accommodates neurodivergence and agoraphobia? How well do you think? Are
I
they
think it's
open to that, or are people still a little bit, touchy on those things and stuff?
I think that they're definitely making strides to improve. The knowledge is
Mhm.
improving. I do
Mhm.
know more people now that are aware of it than, when I was growing up. But I
Yes.
still feel like it's not very well understood by average people in the community. Even like closest friends, I try to explain like this is what's happening and this is how I feel. And I
Yeah.
feel like most of the people I know, like they hear me, but they just can't really like wrap their head around it because there's not a lot of information about it. It's not talked about a lot in schools, and
Yeah.
they're getting better in the schools because my
Mhm.
my child, I let them know, and I know that they have provisions, and she ended up doing great in school, but we didn't know how it was going to
Mhm.
be when she first started, and they have like quiet rooms
Mhm.
for some of the kids, and teachers
Oh,
that can help
okay.
them if they're feeling a certain way, and but they don't
Oh,
really talk about it that much with the kids. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's better in other countries. Like, is it better in
Yeah.
Australia?
Well,
The US is
um,
always very behind medically, I feel like, and
yeah, well,
psychologically.
it's like I I guess we're on the same track. Like people
Mhm.
are getting more conscious and more aware of these people are more open to talking about stuff like this right now, and
Mhm.
it's just not enough information as well here. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? So but people are talking about it. It's just that we need more information out there to be
Mhm.
able to, understand it better. You know what I mean?
Right. And like it's
Yeah.
definitely a comparative thing because if I, you know, were to compare it to the way things were, in the mid 80s when I was a kid,
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, I got diagnosed with I guess ADHD when I was a child, and they
Mm.
put me on Ritalin, and
Mm.
I started having seizures from the Ritalin
Oh.
in the classroom. And I had
Mm.
to go to a neurologist and have like tests run and EEGs and stuff.
Yes,
And
yes.
they determined that what I had was like similar to ADHD, but without the hyperactivity. And took me off
Okay.
the Ritalin. But I think if that were to have happened today, they would have
Yes,
diagnosed me with autism. But
yes,
autism just wasn't well known, and especially with girls. It was more common with boys. Girls tend to mask more. Even at a young age, I would look around the classroom at what my peers were doing and try to like emulate that. And
yeah,
that's just something that girls are better at doing, and so they don't typically get diagnosed. And in the 80s and the 90s, it was like, it was so not
yeah,
well known. Um,
yes.
but yeah,
And yeah, that's true. I mean, because there's a lot of names now for different types of illnesses, mental health
Mhm.
issues, and all that. So I guess there's more studies being done. So
Right.
I guess there's more awareness there, but they have to like really give out the information, not just like doctors or nurses or something like that. Like it has to be like spread everywhere so a lot more people know about it, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not
Yeah.
widespread. That's exactly it.
Yes.
Like
Yes,
doctors and
exactly.
nurses, they know about it, but it's not really talked about in schools. Like
Yes.
they might mention it briefly, but like,
Mm-hmm.
any child that and my kids kind of understand the spectrum better than most kids because I talk about it. Yet any child in their class that like has behavioral issues, or my youngest will be like, this person has autism, and I'm like, it's not all autism. Like, and
Mm.
the teachers aren't explaining it, and I just feel like it
Yeah.
should be more common. Like, it should be more
Yes.
talked about. And
Yes.
it's because it's not like a developmental delay, especially not in all cases. It's just the
Yes.
brain is wired differently, and it, has different triggers and different, responses to things, and thinks differently, and nobody really like discusses that.
Yes, that's true. With societal understanding and support as well, what changes would you like to see in society to better support individuals with these experiences? And what are the biggest misconceptions? That's the second question that society has about agoraphobia and neurodivergence. So let's start, I guess, with the misconceptions and how you would like society to like better that or
There are a
be.
lot of misconceptions.
Mm,
Um, a lot of people just assume if they hear that, they think, oh, so, you're special needs, or like, or they'll
yes,
say,
yes,
you don't have autism, like you talk to people and you have a
yes,
job, and like they just don't understand what it is.
Mm.
um or like how many different levels, not only levels but just variations of it. Like the spectrum's not
Yes.
a line, it's like a chart because there's so
Yes.
many different little pieces of the puzzle, and then within those pieces there's so many varying degrees of, you know,
Yeah, I
how
guess that's
well
why they
they're.
call it a spectrum. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it really
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hard to
That's
wrap your mind, or like even reading about it and like having the knowledge that I have, sometimes it's hard for me to wrap my mind around some of that. But I
yeah.
think where it would start would be just like discussing it more in school and like from the time kids are a young age, because there's there's kids that are neurodiverse. I mean, even ADHD, which is common in children, that's neurodiversity.
Yes.
Um, and it's just not really, people don't know that.
Yes.
But a lot of times people will assume like, oh, if if you have autism, you don't have feelings. I've heard that. And it's
Oh
funny
my
because
goodness.
as a
That's the
sensitive
first time
person,
I've heard that.
I feel so deeply about things. But
Yeah.
with being like neurodiverse,
Yeah.
sometimes you have a difficult time articulating that. And so
Yeah.
at least in my case, and again there's degrees because there are levels of autism where like
Mm.
they don't, they're more geared toward like math and numbers because they don't know how to like associate, feelings. And but it doesn't affect everybody with autism, and then within the people that have that, there's varying degrees of severity. So
Mm.
I do sometimes have a hard time expressing what it is I'm feeling, but
Yeah.
yet I feel things like intensely. Like I'm
Yes.
so sensitive, and like if somebody is like sad around me, or like I see something that I just is not, like just politics in our country right now is just breaking my heart. It's
Yeah.
awful. I mean, like after the second time the orange guy got elected, I don't even
Yeah.
like to say his name. I cried. I was teary for days, like
Yeah.
not days, weeks. I mean, I'm like prone to hyperbole, and I'll be like, oh my God, like we're going to end up in a concentration camp. Like I get so emotional. Like it's bad. Um, so like when
Yeah,
I hear
that's
people say like, oh,
hyperbole.
well, people with autism don't have emotions, I'm like, that's not true.
That's
Like,
not true.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
So I guess you would say more information around it, and so there's a better understanding of these. Yeah.
yes, very much.
Okay.
And I think like
Oh,
from the time kids are young, because that's when you absorb most of everything. You know what I mean? Like they
yeah.
say like kids can learn a language the best within the
Yes.
first 3 years of their life. So like
Yes.
really in very young education, I feel like it should be talked about, on a level that they understand,
Yes,
obviously.
yes, obviously.
But then like follow them like through their education, because I mean
Yeah.
there's so many neurodivergent people, so many
Yeah.
more than anybody ever, what they used to think.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, like your personal journey, how has your understanding of neurodivergence and agoraphobia evolved over time? So, you mentioned you were like sort of quiet and reserved before as well. What
Mhm.
you realized when you were an adult that you
Mhm.
had neurodivergence and such. So how
Yeah, if
how
my daughter hadn't been diagnosed as a toddler, I don't
mm,
know if I ever would have,
oh,
unless information got much better. I would
yes.
think like, I'd think like, why am I so weird? Like, what's wrong with me? Like, these are the thoughts
Mm,
that I would have. And it was kind of like an aha moment when she was diagnosed and I started reading these things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I've done this my whole life. Like, I understand what this is.
Mm,
And when
mm,
she's doing this is because she feels this way. And I just express it in a different way because I'm older and I know how. But like,
yeah.
this is what, it just opened my eyes so much. And she's 10 now. And I started learning about it probably from the time she was about a year old.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's been near a decade
Yeah.
since I have discovered that. And I keep reading more articles and like interviews and just,
Mm,
listening to things and watching, people's YouTube video. Like, I'm always absorbing more information about it because I want
yeah.
to be as informed as possible. I talk about it a lot to people because I want other people to be more informed. And I feel like,
Yes.
and if you're neurodivergent, you're kind of like prone to what they call info dumping. And
Mm,
I did that my whole life before I even really knew what that was. Anything I was like really fixated on, I would just like talk about nonstop. And so
yeah.
when I started learning more about autism, I felt like I was like info dumping about autism. um, but I do think it's so
Yeah.
important that people know and have a good understanding of what it
Yeah,
is.
exactly. Sometimes you have to because that's the only way that people will understand. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah. So, what advice do you give to others who are navigating similar experiences?
Just read as many articles as you can, watch
Mm-hmm.
interviews with people. There's YouTube videos
Mm-hmm.
with where people that actually have ASD, are on the spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Cause like you can read an article written by a doctor who has book knowledge about it, but not firsthand experience. And it's
Yes.
helpful. But
Yes.
so then I'm trying to think. One of the people that I found really helpful, she has a YouTube video. Her name on YouTube is Yo Sam D Sam. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying that right.
Okay.
Um,
We
she
can
was one of the
probably
people.
post the link on this
Yeah,
podcast.
there's others
Um,
on there too. Hers is
yeah.
the name I can think of off the top of my head right now. But it's so helpful to hear other people that are actually on the spectrum talk
Yes.
about it because it makes a lot more sense coming from somebody that has the firsthand experience.
Yeah. Whereas some people like for example, people have written books and stuff but don't have
Hmm.
the actual experience, like firsthand experience, don't really know what they're talking about
Right. And I
sometimes.
think it's still important to read those, especially like to help you understand like how the medical community sees it and how they're still
Yeah.
behind in a lot of ways. I think it's
I guess they
important to.
complement each other, don't they? You know?
Hmm.
Yeah, so you have to
Yeah, it's
be
always good to have like the book smarts, but like a lot of them, even my family doctor who I adore, I mean, I've
mm,
gone to my whole life and I'll drive the extra 20 minutes to still go to him as opposed to like one closer to
ah,
my house.
yeah.
But I remember about 10 years ago when I told him I thought I had it, he was like, "Oh, no, you don't. Like, you're so functional." Like, even the medical community doesn't know a lot about it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's kind of scary
yeah.
when you think about
I
it.
know, I know. Yeah. So, what are your biggest lessons with regards to your experiences?
Learning to be more patient with
Mm-hmm.
myself, like just understanding that I don't process things in the same way that a lot of other people do.
Yes.
And it's going to take me more time for things to sink in and um just being more just being easier on myself, I guess, because my
Yeah.
whole life I felt like something was wrong with me and it's really kind of like given me a complex. I'm like very
Yeah.
self-conscious and very hard
Yeah.
on myself. And I think that was like deeply ingrained in me from the time I was a young child because I felt like I was so different from other people and didn't know why. And I mean like even my mom would be like, "What's wrong with you?" Like
Yeah.
it's very much ingrained with me. So I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is to like be sensitive with other people, even like you don't
Yeah.
know. whether they're on the spectrum or whether they're dealing with something else, it doesn't matter what it
True.
is. You don't know what other people are going through. And so it's been really eye-opening and like helping me be more sympathetic toward other people as well
Yeah.
as myself.
Yeah. So be sensitive to other people's
Very
feelings and
much,
needs
yeah.
as well. And also be sensitive to your needs,
Yeah.
right?
Understand when I need a break, and
Yeah.
that's been huge for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. So creating a quiet room and life. How do you create a quiet room in your daily life, both physically and metaphorically? You know what I mean? So,
So some days I don't always get it. It
mm,
might just be that while I'm at work cleaning, that's my
yes,
quiet time.
yes,
Cuz like I when I work multiple jobs, like this past Friday, I worked in my one job where I clean a couple of army bases, and
yes.
then I go to the college apartments, and I had a turnover that was in like horrible shape. I actually did not get home till almost 1 in the morning last Friday. So like I
What?
had no like, it happens sometimes. My husband hates it too. It happens sometimes. There were
Mm,
people that wanted to tour this place, and the lady that
yes,
lived there had physical as well as mental illnesses and two big dogs, and it was disgusting to say the least.
yeah.
Um and it was my second job of the day, so I didn't even start my shift until that afternoon, and I didn't finish
Oh,
cleaning that place until after midnight. And
oh
so
my
I didn't have
goodness.
any like time to like sit in the quiet of my room, other
Mm,
than when I just went to bed when I got home. So like
mm,
just being in that quiet apartment, cleaning, having music on in the background, but I mean that counted as my quiet
quiet
space for the
room,
day,
yeah, quiet
which wasn't
space.
really enough. And then Saturday I was like in bed half the day, like not sleeping, but
Mm,
reading, writing on Substack, just
mm,
but just resting. I spent more than half the day in bed Saturday, and that happens a lot of weekends.
yeah.
Um, actually had my kids friends like have made comments to them because they've been over and they've said like, "Oh, her mom's in bed." And it's hurtful because like
Yeah.
the parent will comment to the child, and the child then tells my child, and they'll be like, "That's so weird, like why isn't she doing more?" And like it hurts when you know that like
I
people
know.
feel that way. But and then I'm also
Exactly.
going back to that there's just not a lot of knowledge about it. It all goes back to that, like people aren't informed.
Exactly. They don't understand that it's not always about productivity. You
Yeah,
know, you sometimes need time and space for yourself. You
like
know what I mean?
my nerves are frazzled, like I just have to like just sit and have peace. There's really like no
Mm,
other way to say it.
mm. Okay. So, what are your hopes for the future in terms of societal understanding and support? I think we already discussed this, but is there anything else you would like to add with that?
I mean, just for them to keep doing more research on it,
Mm,
to make sure people are informed, young people from, very early childhood. Um, maybe even like have communities. I mean, I'm sure there are
yes.
probably those forming because like I've definitely found communities through Substack, but it's
Yes.
helpful to know other people that are going through the same thing because you don't feel
Yeah,
so alone. I felt so alone for so long, and I didn't know why. Why am I feeling this way? And it's honestly
exactly.
really helpful when you can talk to somebody that's like, yeah, I get it. Like, I've gone through this same thing, and this is what I do to deal with it. And that's
Mm,
huge.
mm. Okay, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Terza.
You're so
And
welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
no, thank you so much for guesting. But Also, thank you for being gracious with the questions. I know it's a
Oh,
lot,
absolutely.
and some of it were like repetitive and stuff, but
Oh,
we
it's
got
okay.
through it.
I
And
I'm glad when people ask questions because I think like it should be spoken about.
yeah,
Um, I
thank
don't know
you.
if you know her name's Jeannie, and I'm like drawing a blank on her last name right now. She has the little girl named Sarah who was born with a
Oh,
cranial.
yes, yes,
Um,
yes,
I had told her the other day because she had gone into like a long article about it, and I was like, I'm so glad that you posted this because like I've wanted to ask about it, but I'm like, sometimes you
yeah,
just don't know how
yeah,
to ask. And she was like, I'm
yeah.
actually really happy when people ask. And I
Um,
get that because like with like the spectrum stuff and when people ask questions, that means that they're interested and they care, and I want them
yeah,
to be
they care
informed.
and they want to understand. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you. It
being
was so
such a
lovely
great
talking to
sister.
you.
It was lovely to speak with you too. Thank you. And one last thing, we wanna like let people know how they can get in touch with you, like on Substack or wherever else. Do you wanna tell people where they can find you?
I mean, I'm mostly just doing Substack now. I Back in the day I did Facebook.
Yeah.
I technically have a Facebook account, but I hate it. Um, I don't like the vibe on there, and
Yes.
I don't know. It's just like with most social media, and I have found
Yeah.
Substack to be really refreshing because most social media, I feel
Exactly.
like it's just a show of like all your best pictures and your best moments, and it's not
Mm,
like honest. And I
mm,
don't know, like it bothers me.
mm.
So right now, the only really like social media app that I use is Substack.
And you're
Um,
called the sensitive artist, aren't you?
yes.
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 And it is growing and healing is
Yes.
your
Growing and
page.
Healing is my other publication, and I'm
Yes.
trying to get that one off the ground. It's not really like picking up as much, I guess, but I'm not a very like tech savvy person, so I don't know. I'm probably just doing it. But
No, you're
um
I'm sure you'll figure it out. We all start somewhere, you know what I
yeah.
mean? So you'll figure it out, and I'm sure it will grow. And like they say, you always just have to be keeping at it, be consistent,
Yes.
and open to learning as well. So you can do it. I'm sure of that. Thank you so much again,
Thank
Tirzah.
you,
Lovely
Anna. It
having
was so
you.
nice talking to you.
You too. Thank you. Have
Have
a
a great
great
day.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.